Powered by Playtech. Hey guys, Arcadian here, back again with another episode of Tips for Bronze. Now last week we looked at ranked anxiety, but this week, as suggested by Darkflame, we're going to be looking at team fighting. So if you've got a topic you'd like me to cover off on in the coming weeks, leave a comment below, but for now, let's get started. So this week we're going to be looking at team fighting. First off, we're going to be looking at the team fight structure and what it's all about. We're going to look at how to initiate and how you can get a great initiation. We're going to look at who to focus and what your role in a team fight should be. We're going to look at after a team fight, what objectives you should secure, what you should be looking for, and of course some tips and tricks to help you team fight more successfully. Before we kick off and get into how to team fight, I first want to take the chance to explain to you the team fight structure and give you a more holistic view of what's happening and why. In League of Legends, people generally talk about a front line, which is generally consisting of tanks, and a back line, which are your carries. Now these are actually two concepts derived from a term called defense in depth, which was coined by an American political analyst, Edward Lutwyck, when describing the defensive strategies of the late Roman army. Defense in depth is a popular and successful military strategy because rather than relying on one single strong retaliation or defense, it creates redundancies and causes the attackers to lose momentum over time as they work their way through your layers of defense. In League, this means that instead of having one giant line that you fight in, by creating a front and a back line, it forces the enemies to have to scrap and fight through your line of tanks, only to be weakened and vulnerable to your carries. In League of Legends, this is so successful that teams run this strategy almost exclusively, and newer players pick this up and end up mimicking this structure without even realizing why. This is why in League, killing a carry early can be so effective, because it makes the first line of defense almost pointless, because with only 5 units, each one is so vital and important. If you can manage to breach and kill the enemy backline, then you have essentially most likely already won the team fight. Every good team fight starts with a strong initiation. A good initiation can be a huge advantage in determining the success of a team fight, but before you engage, you need to be sure that yourself and your team are ready. Firstly, you want to check off a few things to help you know if you want to fight. 1. Is my team ready? Are they all grouped? Do they have their abilities available? And are they healthy enough and have enough mana? Is the enemy team ready? Is there somebody missing? Is there somebody low or with no mana? Or do some of them have their core abilities on cooldown? And most importantly, number 3, is there even a reason for this fight? If there isn't any objectives available and you're not clearly and obviously ahead, other than because it's fun, team fighting doesn't really serve a purpose. Now, if you still think that team fighting is a good idea, you first need to think about who's going to initiate and who's going to follow up. In fact, you should try and anticipate as much as the fight in advance as possible. If Malphite goes in, then who's going to follow up after him? Who's he going to go for? These are the things you need to be thinking about. If you're the initiator on your team, you want to focus exclusively on one of two things. Either locking down or disabling as many enemies as possible to give your team a chance to follow up, or completely locking down and bursting a single high priority threat. Whatever your choice, let your team know what you're going to do. Now I personally prefer the latter and try to take one person out of the fight as cleanly and early as possible. Now that's usually the ADC or the mid laner, the core members of their backline. So each role has a different part to play in a strong team fight. So what I'm going to do is I'll go through each different role individually and explain to you an outline of what you should be doing in most situations. So as a tank, or in most cases a bruiser, your main priority is to create a front line. Your job is to basically be obnoxious and stop the enemies getting onto your carries for free. You're the first line of defense. You want to create as much disturbance as you can and force the enemy carries out of position. Soak up the stuns and the damage, and create a path for your team to roll through. But be aware of the enemy carries. You don't want to put yourself in a position to become free food or take too much damage. You need to be disruptive, but not stupid. As an assassin, your job is pretty self-explanatory. You need to pick the enemy's most dangerous target and do everything you can to kill them as early as possible. The reason this role is so important is because if you can effectively take out high priority targets consistently, you are essentially deleting their backline, a main part of their defense in-depth structure. It'll greatly improve your team's chances of winning. If you're the AD carry, or as Riot would say, the marksman, then you are going to be the main focus of the enemy team. You're going to have tanks charging at you, assassins lining you up in their sights, and every person on the enemy team will be trying to take you out. Now this is where I believe a lot of people go wrong. People always say, don't focus on the tank, but as an AD carry, it is your job to 1, not die, and 2, focus whoever is stupid enough to get into your range. Think back to the defense in depth structure. You are the first line of defense once they break through your front line. So if someone breaks through your front line, you want to be attacking them. They are the ones who are vulnerable. If the tank charges at you and you can kite him back, take him out as fast as you can. If an assassin is in range, take him out instead. Now it is true that you should focus the weakest or squishiest target in your range, but that's only if they come to you. There is no point in trying to run through a bruiser as an AD carry only to get 1 or 2 attacks off before you're eaten by a volibear. Think about it. If you're an AD carry, you don't want to be running through their front line to try and attack their backline. That's not how defense and depth structure works. You want to fight who you can and stay in the fight for the long run. If you're a fighter like Aurelia or Fiora or Xin Zhao or even Lee Sin, you have a very diverse role in teamfights. You can either act as a second tank and get into the front line, but instead of trying to disrupt the enemy, you are forcing them to focus you with the threat that if you are left unchecked, that you will kill their whole team. A tank and a fighter combo as a front line can be extremely effective and hard to deal with. Another option would be to stick back and help your carry deal with the enemy front line. Now this is usually a good idea if the enemy has multiple targets rushing your AP or AD carries. As a support, you have a tough job. You probably have the hardest job of all, and that's to make sure that none of the enemies can do their job. Not only do you have to protect the AD carry, you need to protect all of your carries. If the enemy Rengar and Talon are both just 100% all-inning your mid laner every fight, then you need to focus on protecting him. You need to create vision mid-fight by warding bushes and giving your carries vision. You need to disable and crowd control as many enemies as you can, as well as healing and protecting your carries however possible. Now as a mage or an AP carry, you have a pretty unique ability to deal large amounts of damage in short bursts. What you want to do is to get as many of these bursts of damage off as you can during a fight. Now your first burst should always be on the enemy's largest threat. If you can take out the enemy mage or the AD carry early, you basically win the fight. Now once you've done that, you want to do what you can to stay alive and dish out what damage you can while your abilities are on cooldown. Then, when you're able, send out another rotation of abilities on the next biggest threat still alive. The thing about mages is that they often have abilities built into their kit designed to get through that front line, attack one of the key backline members, and get back to safety, if not just outranging the front line altogether. This can be extremely useful in teamfights and will create strong utility around the mid lane. Once the teamfight is over, now is the time to look for objectives. Depending on how well the teamfight just went, this could be one of the very few times in the entire game where you can take whatever you want and no one will be around to stop you. This could be towers, dragons, baron, anything. Just make sure you take what you can, but you need to do it quickly. If you take too long to take an objective and you don't end up backing in time, this could lead to the enemy respawning and catching you when you're low. Or, if you back too late, you end up being in base healing while they take one of your towers. So if you are super low after a fight and you aren't 100% required to take an objective, just back. I feel it's only right that I cover off on chasing quickly because after all, this is a tips for bronze. If a teamfight is over and you've won the fight and the enemy is running for his life, before or even as you chase, think about what you were going to take when he dies. If he can't stop you taking that objective you have in mind, then just stop the chase and go get that objective. The kill doesn't really serve a purpose. And like I said before, initiating is a huge advantage in any team fight. What the Patsy trick does is give you the perfect engage. The Patsy is someone who baits the enemy team by looking out of position, like a greedy ADC bot lane farming. Then as the enemy team comes in to take him out, your team surprises him with a 5-man hard engage to win the fight. So that's all for this week. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something. If you have any questions about this episode, leave them in the descriptions below. But until next week, Scurb's out.
Shugi, shugi, shugi.